Welcome, everyone. Today, we are diving into Microsoft Purview information protection, specifically focusing on the powerful use cases for sensitivity labels. As data flows freely across devices and clouds, the traditional network perimeter is gone. We must protect the data itself. Let's get started. Let's begin by defining what sensitivity labels actually are. In modern IT, data is fluid. It moves across clouds, personal devices, and external partners. A sensitivity label is a customizable tag that you apply to documents, emails, or even entire SharePoint sites. Once applied, this label embeds itself into the file's metadata. Why is this so critical? Because it ensures that your protection policies travel with the data itself. If a user downloads a labeled financial report to a USB drive and takes it home, the label and all its associated security controls remains completely intact. Administrators use the Microsoft Purview portal to define these labels and publish them to users. For our deep dive, it's important to understand that because these labels write to the file's metadata in clear text, other security systems like third-party firewalls or data loss prevention engines can read the label and enforce their own specific rules based on your Purview classification. Look at the flowchart on your screen. On the left, we start with raw, unprotected data. This data passes through our Microsoft Purview policy engine, where a sensitivity label is applied. Now, trace the paths outward. Whether that data stays on a corporate PC, moves to a portable USB drive, or gets uploaded to an external cloud, the outcome at the right remains identical. Protection travels with data. The security boundary has officially shifted from your network's edge directly to the file itself, giving you absolute control regardless of physical location. Before you configure a single label in Microsoft Purview, you must establish a solid data classification framework. This framework is your organizational blueprint. It typically consists of 3 to 5 clear classification levels, ordered from least to most sensitive, for example, public, general, confidential, and highly confidential. Why do we keep it so simple? Because the success of sensitivity labels depends entirely on user adoption. If you present employees with 20 confusing, jargon-filled options, they will simply guess, rendering your security useless. How do we implement this? You take your business policy and map it directly to Purview sensitivity labels. As a senior expert tip, always follow the crawl, walk, run methodology. Do not try to boil the ocean on day one. Deploy 3 basic labels to a pilot group, measure the impact, collect user feedback, and then gradually introduce more complex, highly restrictive labels as your workforce becomes comfortable with the process. This hierarchical graph represents a best practice data classification framework. At the broad base, we have public data with no restrictions. Moving up, we reach general data for daily operations, which might add a simple footer. Above that is confidential, introducing encryption for internal business. Finally, at the very peak, sits highly confidential, reserved for your most sensitive intellectual property with strict access controls. By keeping the hierarchy visually and logically simple, your users can easily understand the escalating severity of the data they are handling. Let's explore our first major use case, visual markings. Often, the biggest threat to your data isn't a malicious hacker, it's a well-meaning employee making a mistake. Sensitivity labels can automatically apply visual markings to documents and emails, such as custom headers, footers, and large watermarks. Why is this so effective? Imagine an employee drafting a document that is labeled highly confidential. Purview instantly stamps a red header and a diagonal watermark across every page. This creates immediate, unavoidable user awareness. It acts as a continuous psychological reminder to treat the content with extreme care, drastically reducing the chances of accidental oversharing. How is it done? When you configure the label in Purview, you simply define the text, font size, and color for the marking. For our deep dive, remember that these markings are physically injected into the document canvas. This means that if an employee prints the document or saves it as a static PDF, the highly confidential watermark prints right along with it, securing the physical realm. Here we see the workflow of visual markings. The user drafts a document and selects the top secret label from their ribbon. Instantly, the Purview engine steps in and injects formatting. It simultaneously adds a red header, a diagonal watermark, and a standard footer to the file canvas. All these visual modifications converge on the ultimate goal: user awareness is increased. The user now has undeniable visual confirmation of the document's risk level, guiding their subsequent sharing decisions. Our second use case is where the heavy security lifting happens: encryption and access control. Visual markings are great, but they don't stop the hacker. For sensitive data, sensitivity labels can enforce robust encryption using Azure Rights Management. This explicitly restricts who can open a document and what actions they can take. Why is this crucial? If an employee emails a sensitive payroll file to the wrong person, or loses a USB drive containing corporate secrets, encryption guarantees the data remains safe. How do you set it up? As an admin, you map the label's encryption settings to specific Microsoft Entra ID groups. For example, a label called Confidential HR only ensures that only members of the HR security group can decrypt the file. Deep dive scenario: a hacker breaches a perimeter and steals the HR document. Because it is protected by Azure Rights Management, the file is an unreadable cipher. Every single time the file is opened, it calls home to Entra ID to verify identity. The hacker lacks the credentials, so the file remains locked permanently. Let's trace an unauthorized access attempt via this sequence diagram. An unauthorized user obtains the file and attempts to open it. Step 1. The encrypted file does not just open, it pauses and actively checks in with Entra ID's rights management engine. Step 2. Entra ID evaluates the user's token and determines they are not in the required HR group, sending an access denied signal back. Step 3. Consequently, the document remains locked and completely unreadable. Step 4. The cryptography successfully defended the data. Authorizing someone to open a file is only half the battle. Our third use case covers usage restrictions. Sensitivity labels give you granular control over what an authorized user can actually do once they're inside the document. Beyond basic read access, labels can restrict users from editing the content, copying text to their clipboard, or printing the document. Why do we need this? Consider a scenario where you share an unreleased financial forecast with a broad internal team. They need to read it, but you absolutely cannot risk someone printing it out at home or copying the text into a personal email. You configure this by defining precise usage rights within the Purview label settings. For our deep dive, it's vital to understand that labels integrate seamlessly with Microsoft Endpoint Data Loss Prevention, or DLP. If a file has a highly restricted label, Endpoint DLP can physically block the user from uploading that specific file to a personal Dropbox account or dragging it onto an unmanaged USB drive. This decision tree illustrates granular usage rights in action. Our authorized user successfully opens the file, leading us to the Evaluate Usage Rights engine. The user attempts to view content, and the engine allows it. However, when the user attempts to print or copy to clipboard, the label's cryptographic rules instantly block the action. Furthermore, if they attempt to upload to a personal cloud, Endpoint DLP reads the sensitivity label and blocks the exfiltration. The data is entirely boxed in by your security parameters. Our fourth use case removes the weakest link in security: human error. We are talking about automated labeling. While manual labeling is great, expecting users to perfectly classify every single document they create is unrealistic. Purview can automatically apply sensitivity labels based on deep content inspection. Why do this? Because an automated system never forgets. How does it work? Purview uses predefined sensitive information types, or SITs, like social security numbers and credit cards. You can also use AI-driven trainable classifiers, where you train Purview to recognize the unique layout of your company's proprietary contracts or resumes. When Purview detects this content, it automatically stamps the appropriate label. Deep dive insight: auto-labeling operates in two critical phases. It works in motion, instantly applying a label as a user attempts to send an email containing sensitive data. But it also works at rest, continuously scanning your existing SharePoint and OneDrive libraries in the background to classify terabytes of legacy data that users haven't touched in years. Let's follow the automated scanning lifecycle. A document is uploaded to SharePoint, immediately triggering a Purview content scan. The AI inspects the text. If it detects more than 5 credit cards, it takes the top path, auto-applying the confidential label. If the trainable classifier detects proprietary source code, it auto-applies highly confidential. Both of these paths instantly flow into the encrypt and restrict access state. If it just finds routine text, it applies the general default label. Automation ensures zero gaps in your compliance posture. Our fifth use case addresses the biggest concern in modern IT: securing artificial intelligence. As organizations deploy Microsoft 365 Copilot, administrators are terrified that the AI will accidentally surface confidential HR or financial data to unauthorized employees. This is where sensitivity labels become absolutely mandatory. Copilot is hard-coded to respect Purview sensitivity labels. Why does this matter? Because if Copilot could bypass labels, it would be a massive compliance violation. How does the integration work? When a user asks Copilot to summarize a file, Copilot checks the label's encryption. The user must explicitly hold extract and view usage rights, or Copilot acts as if the file does not exist. Now, for the most brilliant deep dive capability, label inheritance. If a user asks Copilot to draft a brand new proposal based on 3 different source documents, Copilot evaluates the labels of all 3 sources. It automatically applies the most restrictive label from those sources onto the newly generated document, ensuring zero downstream data leakage. This flow perfectly demonstrates Copilot's security boundaries. The user prompts Copilot to analyze a dataset. Copilot instantly hits the Check File Label Rights gateway. If the user lacks extract or view rights for that specific label, the system branches left and Copilot completely ignores the file, protecting the data. If the user has proper rights, Copilot processes the data and generates a new document. Crucially, the process ends with the new document automatically inheriting the label from the source. AI productivity is achieved without sacrificing governance. Let's tie all these concepts together with an urgent, real-world use case. Imagine your company is executing a massive, confidential merger under the codename Project Nova. If this leaks, the deal collapses. How do sensitivity labels secure this? Step 1. We use automated labeling. As an admin, you create an auto-labeling policy that scans for the keyword Project Nova. The moment a user types that into a Word document, Purview automatically stamps it with the Project Nova sensitivity label. Step 2. We enforce encryption. You configured this label so that only members of the M&A Exec Entra ID group can open the file. If someone accidentally saves it to a public SharePoint site, standard employees simply see scrambled ciphertext. Step 3. We utilize DLP synergy. You create a rule stating no document with the Project Nova label can be emailed outside the company. The outcome, your M&A executives can use Copilot to safely summarize thousands of pages of deal terms with the generated summaries inheriting the Project Nova label. Meanwhile, your perimeter is absolutely locked down. That is the power of Microsoft Purview. This final architecture summarizes our Project Nova deployment. A document is created containing the secret keyword. This triggers the auto-apply label mechanism, which flows into the Purview policy enforcement engine. The engine executes 2 simultaneous actions. It encrypts the file, locking it to the M&A execs group only, and it integrates with Exchange to ensure external email is blocked. Finally, when those executives utilize AI, the Copilot summary safely inherits the label, perfectly closing the loop on our enterprise data governance strategy.
To find related ebook and other material for this training course, go to quicktechie.com. Now you will see all the video courses are available here. So let's move to the ebooks. You can go here, ebooks, all AI related ebooks like you are watching currently Mythos related training. That ebook would be uploaded under this section. You can download this ebook. PDF would be available, all 300-page PDF. So you just click on the download this entire ebook. You can download from this section. So whatever training you are currently listening, corresponding ebook would be available. We have thousands of ebooks available. Now, other than that, we have on video courses which you are watching right now. This also all AI related courses are available. Similarly, for all company related trainings are available like Microsoft. You can find it here with their respective certification training modules. All exam simulators which would help you to get the certification preparation. Just refresh if you get this kind of error. Okay, so now you can see these are all certification preparation materials. Will also be click here to the NVIDIA certification preparation material. So you can see all NVIDIA certification preparation materials and click on any of this and it would load the entire screen and you can launch the practice paper. So this is what you can see that you can submit the answer. We have an audiobooks available. Okay, so for each section, and these are our alumni who can you can find out all alumni who are accessing our portal.